guys, so this video is going to be about the concept of salutary neglect. And we kind of talked a little bit about it in one of the videos that you guys watched earlier this week about mercantilism. But we're really going to dive into what it was and kind of what problems it's going to cause in the future. So salutary neglect was the unofficial British policy adopted in response to how the British would control the colonies. So we've talked about how different groups came from England and they set up new colonies in the New World. Some of them wanted to get rich, like Jamestown. A lot of them came over for religious reasons, like the Pilgrims and the Puritans. But no matter what reason they came over here and they set up their own self-governments. And so Britain is kind of far away from the colonies. They're about 3,000 miles away across the Atlantic Ocean. And so that's going to make it very difficult for them to govern them directly. They're going to have to rely on the colonies to govern and kind of protect themselves, because there is no, oh, let me pick up the phone and see what's going on in Georgia. Or let me pick up the phone and see what's going on in New Hampshire. There was no way to do that. This distance is 3,000 miles across an ocean. There is no, let me send a letter out here. It's going to take 2 to 3 months for the letter to even get there. There is no, oh, let me walk over here across the street and see what's going on in the colonies. They're very far apart. So this distance meant that it would take 2 to 3 months for a problem to be reported to England, 2 to 3 months for people from England to come back across the ocean with a way to solve the problem, and then 2 to 3 months more after the problem's been solved for the news about it to get back to the king. There was no cell phone, no chat snap, no quick way to communicate between the colonies and England. So the colonies were basically left alone for 120 years. The King of England kind of just was like, okay, I'm going to throw my sunglasses on, throw my shades on, hater blockers, and I'm not going to pay attention to what's going on in the colonies because they're governing themselves right now. He was okay with this because the colonies were still sending him natural resources, so he was still making a lot of money off of them. He just wasn't overly concerned with kind of how they were governing themselves and things like that, because he was concerned with making that money. So once the colonies were set up, Britain largely left them all alone. That's what salutary neglect is all about. Okay, they are neglecting them. They're leaving them alone. They're not helping them out really. And so that leads us into kind of how they're going to feel about this. So during salutary neglect, like you can see in the picture, it's basically like the British had a blindfold on. They're not really paying attention to what's going on in the colonies. England's government is essentially ignoring the colonies for 100 or so years and letting them govern themselves. All of this is because of how distant physically the English were from the colonists. It is a 3,000 mile distance to cross that ocean. So they basically got their blindfold on, not really paying a whole lot of attention to what's going on in the colonies. So salutary neglect is basically fancy talk for being left alone. You guys as teenagers probably think you would like that, not being told what to do by anybody. And so the colonists really liked it as well, but it's not going to go so well later on once Britain tries to start enforcing its rules again. So Britain, for a very long time, did not really enforce any laws on the colonies, particularly in response to trading. This guy with the fancy wig up here named Robert Walpole, he was the prime minister in Great Britain. So think of him kind of as like a very high government official, kind of like what are not really a president, but like a governor or something. So he is going to be in charge of British government. And he says, okay guys, if we don't place any laws on the colonies, they're going to flourish. They're going to do really well. They won't have us restricting them. They'll be able to trade. They'll be able to make money, grow all these natural resources, and then England will get super rich off of it because they send us that money because they are our colonies. And so this was a good strategy, economic strategy for England. They basically left the colonies alone, but still made money off of them because the colonies had to send them natural resources. Britain would take those resources, make goods out of them, and then sell them back to the colonies and then to other places in the world. But this is definitely going to backfire here in a little bit after the British victory in the French and Indian War. So the policy of salutary neglect is going to officially last from the founding of Jamestown in 1607 until the end of the French and Indian War in 1763. The colonists got really used to doing whatever they wanted to do. It's kind of like whenever we were out for Corona for so long, you guys got used to doing what you wanted to do because you didn't have to come to school. So the colonists got really used to not having to follow rules, follow certain laws, listen to government authority other than the one that is in the colony. So after the French and Indian War, Great Britain's going to be like, maybe we made a mistake leaving y'all alone for so long. Y'all are getting a little independent and we don't like that, so we're going to start controlling you again. And the colonists are going to get big mad. The colonists had virtually been around to run themselves for 150 years. You guys are teenagers. You don't like being told what to do all day, every day. The colonists didn't either, especially when they'd been left alone for so long. And so, like you guys do, when you get told not to do something, you usually sneak and do it anyway. That's what the colonists started doing. Britain tried to tell the colonists that they couldn't trade with other people. So the colonists started smuggling. They brought goods in secretly from other places and sold them. That way they didn't have to pay Britain's price for goods. So they're going to start rebelling in small ways against the British, particularly when it comes to taxes and things like that. So after the French and Indian War was over, we're going to discuss that next week. That's what we're going to talk about on Tuesday and Wednesday and a little bit of Thursday. The British realized that maybe salutary neglect was not the best thing they could have done for the colonies. So they tried to change it. They're going to start enforcing certain rules, one of which is going to be the Proclamation of 1763. After the French and Indian War, the British are going to own all the land from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River. But they're going to tell the colonists that they can't pass the Appalachian Mountains. And that is going to royally anger the colonists, because they don't feel like they should be told they can't go somewhere when they helped fight in this war to win that land. And so the Proclamation of 1763 is one of the first things that the British try to put back in place after salutary neglect. And the colonists just ignore it. They go past the Appalachian Mountains anyway. They're also going to try to get the colonists to pay extra taxes to help pay for the French and Indian War. Naturally, the colonists are not going to be cool with this at all, and it is going to set the stage for the epic throwdown known as the American Revolution.